Sober Day friends. Welcome to the Sobriety Diaries. My name is Nate. I am a grateful recovering alcoholic, 7 years from my last drink. The Sobriety Diaries is a video podcast where we share powerful stories of recovery told by those who lived them. Check us out at thesobrietydiaries.com for all things podcast related. And for all our video interviews, head over to youtube.com/Nate Kelly. Also, please share this podcast with just one person in your life who may still be struggling. You just never know what they may need to hear today. Recovery is possible. I am here with a longtime friend. It's weird for me to say that. Usually I jump in by saying my new friend, but this is a different experience for me as well. We are here with one of my longest friends, Lizzy. Let's just put it out there. We're both a little nervous. We are both a little out of our element. And even after so many of these that I've done, it's different for me to talk to people that I know personally and know on such a deep level. So this is going to be a new experience for me, probably a new experience for the listeners as well. I'm glad that you agreed to tell your story today and that we get to share this experience together. Lizzy has a unique story in that her journey and her addiction that we will hear more about today comes from a place that, you know, started as necessary to really live life, right? With pain management, and it just evolved into something that turned away from being only pain management. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think that is the uniqueness of the story that we will hear today.
So I think one of the things I didn't realize until after I had kind of made it through the storm was that one of the things I was self-medicating at a certain point was anxiety. So I want to start where I feel like things went off the rails with anxiety in conjunction with the chronic pain. So I was born, I found out much later, but I was born with a congenital kidney defect, and it causes me to have a lot of kidney stones and pain. So that was fine. I mean, when you and I met, I had already, that was part of my life. So this is fast forward 2007. I'm done with college. I'm in my career. I just gotten married. And up and until that point, we lived together.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So we met when I was 16, and not to hijack your story, but I think, you know, once we get into more current day stuff, it'll make sense. But we met when I was still in high school through my sister, who you were roommates with in college, and we really hit it off. And, you know, I was kind of obsessed with you for a long time, and to a degree. And, you know, we ended up in at the same college for a period of time and lived together, you know, as we graduated and sort of moved into adulthood and starting our careers. And so we've definitely been through different phases of our lives together. But then, let's jump to after, I guess, the wedding, or where you want to pick it up to. But yes, we had already been through a lot of stuff together and a large portion of our lives together at this point.
Yeah. And I think the time that we lived together was probably a breeding ground. I mean, not that the environment was a breeding ground, but that was kind of like the period right before both of us probably lost control a little.
For sure. Yes.
So for me, it was like getting married. And then I had just started a new job that year. And I feel like it was around 2008, or I think it was 2009, that I started feeling like immense anxiety every day when I would wake up for work. Like, I had been in and out of work on FMLA because of the chronic condition, just like in college, you know, I would be gone for a quarter and then come back. So I thought that I was used to it, you know, but when it starts to affect your performance and somebody's telling you like, this is affecting how we see you, and in turn, how I saw myself, rather than just getting a D in a class, you know, it's just like, oh, whatever, shove it out of my mind. So the anxiety really started to get to me. I think this is in hindsight, you know, at the time, because I do try to figure out how I allowed doctors to just keep shoving more medication at me, because that's really what happened. I was able to manage pain medication from when I was a teenager, you know, and in college, I remember friends would be like, oh, let me have one of those. And I'd be
Yeah.
like, okay, what's the big deal? Like I didn't even understand really. Because it wasn't a fun thing for me.
Yeah.
And so I think that in 2009 was when I feel like I started putting a lot of focus and attention on making sure I had medication. Like just the idea of not having it made me feel anxious. And one of the things with chronic pain that people with it would know is that you aren't ever really without pain. It's just your capacity to cope with it. And so when your anxiety is heightened, you don't have that capacity that you could if you didn't have the anxiety.
Mm.
So that plays a lot into it.
You said something that like really struck me and that I hadn't really thought of because it affected me as well. That this idea of other people noticing things that affect them in a professional setting
Yeah.
and referencing it back to like just getting a D in a class, that makes so much sense. It's like you are affecting other people around you, and in a professional setting, they're not going to be shy to let you know that either. So
Right.
it does create that almost that like dread or that feeling of
Yeah.
like doom when you're like getting ready to go to work in the morning.
It felt like a storm. Every time I woke up in the morning, it felt like a storm. And then as it progressed, when I would wake up, like when you wake up at like 4 a.m. and you hit your alarm and you're like,
Yeah.
yeah, I have 2 more hours.
Yeah.
So it was affecting that time as well. I'd be like, oh my gosh, I have to exist. I
Yeah.
have to exist in 2 hours. So that would start me being like, oh, I can't fall back asleep. I can't fall back asleep because I'm in pain. I'm going to take some pain medicine. So then I would be groggy when I would wake up. And I think that would affect me too. And going back, actually, I think even when we lived together, I was having issues with work. Like my attendance was poor.
Yeah.
And I do think that the anxiety had always been affecting me, but I think it got out of hand, like where it started to like negatively affect my career and where I saw my future going,
Yeah.
because I felt like I had always had that under control. So I think it was 2011 that I was put into. So 2009, I'm in and out of FMLA, and I'm just trying to survive. And it's kind of a blur. I was just waking up. I mean, sometimes I would just wake up in the morning, just full crying, like couldn't breathe,
Yeah.
crying. I didn't even really know why. If I really asked myself, am I in this much pain? It wasn't. It wasn't all pain.
Yeah.
Um,
You said another thing, that feeling that we just have to exist. And
yeah.
it's like that's a lot for people that deal with heightened anxiety on a regular basis. And sometimes you don't even know where it's coming from. It's just this
Mhm.
idea that we have to exist.
Now that I've gotten older and I'm starting to like unpack where some of my anxiety comes from, I feel like I'm becoming more aware, but it's like a lifetime of unpacking.
Yeah.
So it's not an easy task whatsoever. And my ability when I was younger to kind of push things out of my mind stopped existing when I got older. And it didn't have anything to do with medication or even anxiety, maybe a little bit of anxiety, but I think it just happens with age. Like
Yeah.
you can't ignore things that you used to be able to ignore. So I was put into pain management in 2011. That was another like turning point because up until that point, I was only going to give me what doctors could give me. They have rules, how much they can prescribe a patient
Right.
without getting flagged. And so in 2011, I was put into pain management. I remember at the time thinking like, oh, good. I'm in pain management. This is going to be easier now for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
But really in hindsight, I don't think I ever would have been able to avoid it, but it is where things went off the rails with quantity. So
At this point, had it progressed from the delivery method too? Was it pills to patches to different? I mean, had you progressed to different?
no. So before 2011, I was just 100% like Percocet or Vicodin. Like
Okay.
there was, I think a few times I was given like something stronger in a pill form, but only when I was in the hospital are you given the stuff that like works fast
Yeah.
typically. So at this point, the reason I got put in pain management is because I was in and out of the hospital so much. They really only do anything if there's a surgical intervention needed. So it's just kind of like, oh yeah, deal with it type thing. So I got put into pain management, and that's when the delivery method changed. Like I remember being given like a long lasting Percocet type pill at that point. But it didn't work. And then the doctor switched me over to fentanyl patches. And I started low with those, and they did work. They were keeping me out of the hospital less. I don't know, it worked for the pain, but I think that was also the beginning of the end of, because my personality was gone. I mean, it started then. I don't know at what point it got to a point where it just got away from me so much that I kind of woke up one day and I was like, I don't even know who I am. Yeah, that's when things started to change. And then what really happened is I would have these situations of going into the emergency room, and pain management doctors, there are some good pain management doctors, but the one I was seeing at the time was what people kind of refer to as like a pill mill type thing. I mean, it was above board. Everything was legit, but they were seeing so many patients a day, and they didn't really have a lot of time for you. So it was like you go in to get your refills, and it's like, oh, you've been in the hospital twice, or you had this surgery, since I saw you last, and it was just like, here's an increase. And I don't remember at what point, in what order they got increased, but by the time I went into detox, I was on like 125 mics of fentanyl patch, which is like 25 higher than what they only go to 100. So I was given 2 to put on at a time.
Wow.
And then I was given like, I mean, I can't even remember, honestly. I know that my pain pills were 30 milligrams, which is just insane to me. But I was given like 6 a day, which is like, it's just insane to me. And then on top of that, I would have like Dilaudid in some form. So like Dilaudid suppositories. At one point I had those fentanyl suckers.
Yeah.
Or like the spray that you would I remember the first time I got the spray, like I was like, oh, I'm going to try this because I was in a lot of pain. And I felt like I was on a roller coaster. And I mean, roller coasters are fun. Like you can't, there's no way around that, So it was like, oh, this is going to kill my pain. And I get to forget about existing for a while,
Yeah.
And so one of the things my husband talks about that was scary for him was like with the fentanyl suckers is that like I would like go to use one, and then like I would like fall asleep and have one in my mouth. It was an escape.
Yeah. You had the benefit of it relieving pain and the escapism.
Yeah. But what ends up happening is when you escape from something, when you come back to reality, it's even more intense, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, I just didn't, I was able to not exist for however many hours. And now I'm like back to existing. Am I even in pain? Do I want more pain medication?
Yeah.
Am I in enough pain to take pain medication? And so it becomes a slippery slope. And like I said, I think I've probably suffered from anxiety my whole life. I have ADHD, like on such a severe level, as you know.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think anxiety's always existed. And there's also this kind of process you go through. And this is probably true with any addiction and not just, chronic illness, is the fact that you're in some sort of chronic illness or addiction feeds the anxiety, which you then need to escape from.
Yes.
So it's like, it's such a slippery slope. Like it gives me chills thinking about, because one, sometimes I can't believe that I got out, that I was able to pull myself out, because I don't consider myself to be a strong person. But like, I'm like, oh, I was strong to you,
For sure.
1 minute.
The just strength that it takes for someone to have that realization. And I mean, it is the hardest thing I've ever done. I'm sure you can agree that the best decision, but decisions like that don't come easy, and it's fucking hard.
It's so hard. Okay. I remember being 33 and sitting in the hospital and just being like, I looked at my hospital band and I was like, oh, I'm 33. That's interesting. I thought I could have sworn I was 32, or maybe I thought I was 34. I just remember thinking, oh, I'm 33. Probably for a couple of years. I, was thinking a lot about, my husband and I had been married since 2007. We did want to have a child. I was it kind of, my weight has always ebbed and flowed, but I know right before I went into detox that year, I was very much the most overweight I had ever been. And that was also affecting my anxiety and my happiness and
Right.
my ability to cope, you know? And so I remember consulting like doctors at the time, and they were like, well, yeah, people can still have a baby, but they just have to, you know, go through detox when they're born. And I was just like, what? No, like there is no way. And not to diminish anybody that has done that. Like that, I mean, that is fine. To be able to admit to doctors when you're pregnant that you are taking medication is a noble thing so that they're prepared when the baby's born.
Right.
So, but I just couldn't go into it planning like that. Like I wasn't going to plan for a child with that. And that's just me. I wouldn't have been able to handle it
Yeah.
with my anxiety. So I was in so much pain. Like with the most pain medication that I was on in my life, I was in the most pain in my life. In hindsight, I know that. At the time, I just thought this was the escalation of chronic pain. Like I didn't know any better.
Right.
But I knew that there was like this nugget of hope that I could be in less pain if I did this. And I wanted to have a baby. I wanted to lose weight. And I wasn't going to be motivated to do anything if I was laying in my bed spaced out all the time, you know?
Right. Right.
So I remember I had been thinking about this for a while, and I had to have like a family member drive me to my doctor's appointments because I didn't even feel comfortable driving, which is good, which is a good thing. But I remember I was walking back out to my mom's car after one of my doctor's appointments, and I remember looking at the sky. It was so blue, the clouds were so white, and I just remember thinking,
It's okay. It's tough.
somehow the strength just came over me. Like, you can do this, you know? I'm not crying because I'm sad. I'm crying because I'm thankful.
Right.
I don't know where I'd be. Like, I don't know where I'd be if that hadn't happened. I had actually already called the Cleveland Clinic to get into a functional medicine doctor that my pain doctor had suggested when I'd first brought this up as I was doing my research. And I had to wait 10 months for that appointment. But that appointment was coming up, I think, in August or September. Once I got into that appointment, I had just made the decision. So when you're with pain management, you can make the decision to take 3 months of prescriptions at once. But if you do that, you're discharged. So you can't go back to them. And so I had made the decision before the functional medicine appointment to do the 3 months of prescriptions. And I really didn't plan on doing the full 3 months. I thought I was going to go immediately after I saw functional medicine and got like, you know, I wanted all my bases covered. I'm the type of person
right.
have to know everything about something before I jump in. So
Lizzy is quite the researcher.
the hyper focus is real with me.
Yeah.
I was afraid of tapering down. I was on so much medication it would have taken forever.
Yeah.
And obviously I'm about instant gratification.
Right.
It would have taken so long. And also at that point, when it comes to addiction, I had not yet kind of crossed over to like a hardcore mental addiction. So I was very physically addicted. Like I would have withdrawal symptoms if I didn't take the medication. Not even like trying to not take it, just like in between doses. It's like different, you know, when you're,
right.
You know, I mean, as it wears off, I guess. I knew I wanted to do it all at once. I knew I needed to go someplace inpatient because I knew I didn't have the strength to weather that storm alone, you know?
Same.
So the goal was to get my body to a place where I could most efficiently and successfully detox inpatient. So they gave me like this really strict nutrition guide. Like we started shopping at Whole Foods. And they recommend, and they put me on all these supplements, tons of supplements, like detox support. And
was this leading up to the detox?
Yeah.
Or okay.
So they recommended that I do it for a month, that if I did the food and the supplements for 1 month before I went into the medication detox, my body would be the best setup to to go through the detox from the medication because
Right.
I knew it was going to be hell. Like,
Yeah.
and I remember I checked in on December 8th. So it was like a month and a half that I was
Yeah.
like, oh my God, like, then I mean, when I
Oh,
say I
gotta do
didn't
it.
waver, I knew I was going to do it, but I was given this 3 months of prescriptions. And it's like, if I can push this off,
Yeah, of course.
yeah. So I did that, but I didn't let it get to the point where I was like out of medication.
Right, right.
You know what I mean? Like I wasn't going to take it that far. And actually the day I went to check in, they go through your medications and they say, okay, we're going to give you this for like detox, like for withdrawal symptoms, while you're in there. I was prepared for what I would go through in those 3 months, that I would be in agonizing pain. But up until I got put into pain management, like that was part of surviving, was just
Right.
figuring out, because you don't always have pain medicine. So that was the goal. Cold turkey. I don't know. I was losing my mind. The discomfort of withdrawal is so, especially for everything I was on, like it was just so intense, and I had added to it, and I still didn't know what was happening to me at the time. So I was like, I don't want to be here. They were like, you have to be here. I was like, cool. I want to die. Like it was really bad. I don't have those thoughts a lot, but I was like, there's no way I can do this. And I
Yeah.
wasn't completely right in the head. I really thought that I was dying. I thought that these people didn't believe me, like that they couldn't possibly understand what I was going through. Now, afterwards, I know that I was going through a lot more than what people go through, because I did the precipitated withdrawals and this antipsychotic that made me crazy.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I have chest pains, and I did lie. It was a lie, but I needed to get out of there into a hospital because I really thought I was going to die of a heart attack. It's such a good thing that they don't let you leave. Like, honestly, the best policy.
Yeah.
That whole incident, I feel like, was kind of in a way a gift, because I was basically sedated
Yeah.
during the worst part. What I experienced as the worst part of withdrawal. They say that it peaks after like 72 hours withdrawal, and it wasn't a walk in the park when I was there. But after that point, I only took like 3 or 4 doses of the Subutex, and I was allowed to have it like every 4 to 6 hours. And I was there for 7 days, and I only took like 4 doses of it total. And the doctors were just kind of like, wow, like we've never seen somebody accelerate through this so quickly, especially with the amount of medication you were on.
Right.
And I was so annoying when I checked in. Like, you have to like check in all your medications. So I had like a grocery bag, because these supplements come in big bottles,
Yeah.
and you can't just take something in a baggie,
Right.
So I like have all these supplements in bottles, and they have like this safe where they keep the medication. There wasn't even enough room for it,
Oh my God.
So they had to have it like in the corner of the little med room. And I was like, I am going to take these supplements. You're going to let me take these supplements, and I need them. So they did. And like at one point, the doctor admitted, she was like, I think all that, preparation you did probably did a lot for you.
Oh, that's amazing.
I felt really appreciative that I had prepared.
Yeah.
Um,
How has your relationship with pain, I guess, changed?
So I think when things were bad, I wasn't able to separate out anxiety from pain. So like I said, it has to do with your ability to cope with the pain. And if I was anxious about anything, I assigned that to, well, now I can't cope with pain. And now I do. I'm very mindful of my anxiety, and like I said, I've almost gone in the opposite direction of blaming things on anxiety, and not. I question, how much pain am I feeling? Is it a perception? Is it real? Is it necessary? Do I have to medicate this pain? Like, and that has stuck around. I mean, this was at the end of 2015, and I mean, it's 2022, and
Yeah.
it's stuck around. And I did have a daughter, and when I was off, when I was pregnant, I was off medication.
Yeah.
And it was fine. Like, it was.
So
One thing I have learned, though, is I can't say I'm in pain. If I vocalize how much pain I'm feeling, or if I tell my husband I'm having a lot of pain right now, I've noticed it's worse if I acknowledge it. So if I if I just keep it to myself and say, okay, you can handle this. And because before this, like when I would be having pain, I was not shy. I'm an open
Yeah.
book.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I would tell people like, this hurts really bad, or I would scream out in pain or cry about pain. And I do stuff it in more, but it actually helps. It really does, for me at least.
That makes sense.
Um, and that's one good thing about my relationship with pain, is that I don't talk about it. I don't acknowledge it. It's not a part of my life. Like, I don't want my kid to hear me complaining about being in pain, because I don't want that to be a lasting memory of hers. Like, oh,
Yeah.
my mom, she was great. She was in pain her whole life. Like, it's just not something I want to be attached to me. And I don't know if you remember this from when we were in college and on, like, I was so angry about I've always been
Yeah.
angry about having like this chronic thing.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's not something that I'm going to be like open with. And like, I don't tell a lot of people about it. Um, if you do find out about it, it means you're like a close friend,
Yeah. Yeah.
because I just like to kind of skate by like I'm just like everyone else.
Yeah.
I think also what kind of fed into this, because I wasn't diagnosed with the congenital defect until
Much later.
much later, is I felt like I was always trying to convince people that what I was
Mm.
going through was real, like with doctors and stuff. So I think I kind of went out of my way to seek validation from people that weren't going to be like, oh, I don't believe you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And again, things that I don't even realize until later. But I do think that I was spending so much of my energy trying to convince, how can I exist if I have this problem that's based in medicine, and this person that is also based in medicine is saying, no, you're just a pill seeker,
Right. Right.
it takes a toll on you. And I think maybe one point I had started to believe that, even like I had to separate out the anxiety from the pain. And that was a big part. And then just like talked about the loss of personality, like I was like a 20% version of myself,
Mm.
like my light had been extinguished, is a good way to put it.
That's
And
accurate. Yeah.
I know that now. I mean, the year after, like after you get through this, like the way you feel so phenomenal, people just don't understand sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think I could get annoying, sometimes, because I'm just like happy with life and like
Yeah.
more chill. I think that surprises a lot of people.
One of the things that, and just sort of speaking about that too, and like once you get to the other side of it and you have these different perks or different like things that you get to experience now in life, where at least for me, it wouldn't have been possible. But one of the things that has been really special for me is the ability to, repair relationships that have perhaps suffered because of my addiction, or look back and take accountability for things that I was responsible for in addiction, and look to better those things. And
Yeah.
I think that, you certainly, for me, when our relationship sort of had been fractured, was really right at the end of my using and my active addiction, when I was placing zero responsibility or accountability on my relationship. So,
I have things to say about that too, because like for me, like the loss of personality that I talked to about in relationships, it was like a slow decline. And I was not, I mean, I was a shell
yeah.
version of myself.
Yeah.
And I know that you noticed that.
I'm glad that we have been able to sort of crack the ice and sort of forge this new
Yeah.
beginning to a relationship that has now been over 2 decades,
Yeah.
and one that I really hold dear. So I'm
Me-
glad that like we can have this opportunity to repair things that horrible sort of outcoming of my addiction, for sure, but I would imagine, if I could probably speak for you as well, being one of the things that I regret the most. So I'm happy that we can sort of
Yeah.
move forward and try to repair We can't make up for lost time, but we can create new memories. Thanks so much for listening today, friends. Hopefully you heard something that resonates with you, and if we help just one person, our job is done. Make sure you check out today's show notes for all of the information on today's episode and how to connect with our guest. You can find all things podcast related and subscribe to our show at thesobrietydiaries.com, youtube.com/Nate Kelly, where we upload today's video podcast, and on Instagram at the Sobriety Diaries Pod. Check back every Wednesday for new episodes with new stories to tell. But until then, try your best not to drink and be good to yourself. Bye, friends.